Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. We got 2 great hours of radio for you. And I know I say that sometimes, but I really mean it today. Second hour, we're going to talk with one of the authors of really what I think is one of the most important books, at least for people who read at my level, to come out in a long time. It's called Sexual Identity, The Harmony of Philosophy, Science, and Revelation. John Finley, the one of the authors of the book and the editor of the book, will be here with us second hour. This hour, we tackle the situation faced by Christian families in a world that has kind of become post-Christian. It's kind of letting go of its connection to Christ. How are moms and dads supposed to raise faith-filled kids in this post-Christian world? Of course, your calls are welcome, 888-318-7884, but you better dial soon because this is a very popular topic, and these are 2 guests this hour who are very much in demand. Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak are our guests. Greg is the founder and executive director of the Pastoral Solutions Institute, which is dedicated to helping Catholics find faith-filled solutions to tough marriage, family, and personal problems. He and Lisa are the authors of a whole stack of books together. Look, if I tried to say all the stuff that Greg and Lisa Popcak have done, we're not going to have a show. So among the books, Parenting Your Kids with Grace and Parenting Your Teens and Tweens with Grace. And if all that ain't enough, they host More to Life, mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on the EWTN.
The question is, how do Catholic families stand up to this culture? How do Catholic families not, isolate themselves? Because I think that there's a tendency to want to try to do that and hide out.
Yeah.
You can't really do that. So how can Catholic families, be in the world but not of it, and raise confident Catholic kids who can own their faith into adulthood?
And when people hear Greg say, how do Catholic families, how Catholic parents stand up to the culture right now, I think the image is we should be like, leading the charge and be very militaristic. But that's not what's actually going to keep our kids, first of all, falling in love with God and their faith in the first place, and then staying with it through their adulthood and raising our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren in the Catholic faith, which I think every Catholic parent really wants, really desires that faith for their children, and for it to be passed down for generations. If your faith matters to you, the people you want to absorb it the most are the children that you love in your life.
The number is 888-318-7884. Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak are our guests this hour. Your calls are welcome. We're talking about that struggle to raise Christian kids in a de-Christianizing society. I have to tell you, though, I do think many parents feel kind of powerless against all of this. I don't think that it's paranoid to think that there's actually many people who are trying to separate, kind of put a division between kids and their Christian parents. I don't want to blame a particular institution, but where you are, it could be the, whatever TV network they're watching, whatever they're seeing on the internet, could even be their school. So how do we not have this powerlessness as parents?
Sure. Well, the good news is that parents have much more influence than they think they do. But there are certain things that we need to do as parents to make sure that we really can access that influence. Mm-hmm. Because there is some research that suggests that parents don't have much influence at all, and other research that shows that the parents actually are the most influential. And the difference is how much time parents invest in creating a family relationships, and secondly, the quality of those relationships in the home. So if we allow our families to be completely divided up because we have 30,000 activities every night of the week, we're not going to have any influence on our kids. On the other hand, if you can't isolate yourself, but if you prioritize family life as the most important activity in your week, and you make time for these rituals for working and playing and talking and praying together,
right?
And you work on the quality of the relationships, then you actually are able to have quite a bit of influence over your kids. In fact, even more influence than the culture or peers.
So it's funny because I think it's almost like, and I suppose there's something to this that might be intentional as well, but there's a sense of making parents feel guilty if the kids aren't, carted around constantly to this or that event, sports league, activity, drama club, whatever it is. You really are made to feel guilty.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we have a 16-year-old still left in the house, and post-COVID era has gotten a billion times worse for all of her friends. Now, our daughter's homeschooled, but involved in a lot of outside activities.
Okay.
Most of her friends are public school kids. And when everybody went back to school, all of the after-school teachers decided they needed to show that their jobs were necessary. And play practice now goes from 2:30 in the afternoon till 11 o'clock at night.
Oh,
and
come
you're running
on.
from here to there. Oh,
No,
no, I'm not
seriously.
kidding. I know 16-year-olds who get up in the morning, are at school by 7 o'clock, and do not walk back in their own door till 11 o'clock at night. And the parents are sold this, well, if they don't do it, they'll never get into college,
Right.
because colleges are looking for all these activities and well-roundedness. And so we are made, you're dead on right, to feel guilty for not doing all that. Plus, we want our kids to have friends. Plus, we figure if they're busy, they'll stay out.
Provides more expert accompaniment and additional exclusive resources for people to really live this out more fully. But anybody can access.
Our guests, you know them from More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak, mornings on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have questions, 888-318-7884 is the number, 888-318-7884. Before we go to the break, though, I know there are many people who won't be able to call right now. Maybe you're in the car or whatnot, but they're going to want to know about the webinar a week from today. So Ave Maria Radio, I believe, is sponsoring this. And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's called Raising Confident Catholic Kids. And it is sponsored by Ave Maria Radio. It's free. And if folks go to catholichom.com/webinar, they can sign up for it. Again, it's catholichom.com/webinar. We're going to be presenting this framework that we've developed with the USCCB and the Vatican to help Catholic families really create strong Catholic households that allow a strong relationship with their kids, that helps their kids own their faith and live their faith out in the world. And so it's if folks would like to learn basically the details of that framework, they can go to catholichom.com webinar and sign up. It's absolutely free, and it's next Wednesday evening at 7:30 Eastern.
CatholicHOM.com. Check it out. Get the app. And then if you'd like to participate in the webinar, CatholicHOM.com/webinar. It is time for us to take our first break. We got a bunch of folks on the line. I think we got a couple lines open, so you can still get in the queue if you'd like. 888-318-7884.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
I don't like looking back. I prefer to look forward and keep moving forward. There's plenty to cover. I do a lot of research and try to dig out the bits and pieces of a life or of an agenda that people don't want to talk about.
The World Over with Raymond Arroyo, Thursday night.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak, our guests this hour. We're talking about building families that build, I don't know if build is the right word, but help form young people, children who can grow into faithful, joyful Catholic adults. If you have a question in that regard, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. We do have folks on the line. If you'd like to go to calls, and then
Can I just, before we do the calls, very quickly, I just wanted to talk just briefly about what this framework is that we have on Catholic Home. This isn't something that Lisa and I just sort of dreamed up. This is something that's been developed over the last 3 years. We, in 2019, before the pandemic, we hosted a symposium at the University of Notre Dame with the OSV Institute, Holy Cross Family Ministries, and the McGrath Institute for Church Life, where we were looking at the question of, what would it take to
Yep.
raise Christian kids in a post-Christian world and to renew Catholic family life. And ever since then, we've been engaging in dialogue with lots of social scientists, theologians, the USCCB, and then finally the Vatican Dicastery for Laity, Family, and Life, where Lisa and I presented the opening keynote at the World Meeting of Family.
Taking them out to the narthex.
Mhm.
I'm finding I'm taking them out to the narthex more often than not, or they have emergency that aren't emergency bathroom breaks that they have to go on several times.
That's,
So
they know that's
would love
the
to
way.
know-
All right, Jack.
Yeah, exactly.
Jack, because it's a question that we've been answering since the beginning of our ministry, and that every single parent is now sitting in their driveway waiting to hear the answer to. So thank you for asking it for so many people. Now you said 6, 5, and 3. This is
6, 5,
this
and
is
3, yes.
the beginning of the answer is this, and then we'll back up to when's the wrong and right time. But at 6, 5, and 3, you've got kids who understand language, and so the first step to this is making sure that you're preparing them ahead of time for going to the Mass. So things like getting out either a children's missal or a children's Bible that happens to have Catholic readings in it, and reading them ahead of time the night before, and then doing little things like you talk about it, you talk about what the stories mean, and then give each of them like a word for each of the readings to listen for, like a particularly like Bible-y or churchy word that they wouldn't hear every day.
Prodigal. When you hear the word prodigal,
and then you just tap mom on the knee and say, "My word," like just whispering. You teach them how to whisper, but you give them things to engage in the Mass with, so that they're already tuned to listening. It becomes more of a very respectful, educational game for them. They're engaged. The more you can keep them engaged in the Mass, the less you're going to have the boredom when they're not hearing it, they're not seeing it.
Yeah.
Getting closer.
having
to the
having a
altars
children's
is a good thing.
missal that you can kind of go through and point at the pictures with them
The
for you.
Magnificat one is wonderful, and I get nothing for saying that.
So those are some things that you can do to kind of prepare them. If they start fussing in church, what you want to do is sort of set up the expectation that they're going to have a little more freedom in the pew than they will if you have to take them in the back. So
Let's define freedom.
well,
Some
yeah,
people-
what I mean by that is that they can sit, and next to you.
They can cuddle with mom and
cuddle with
dad.
mom and dad. They can do appropriate things, in the pew. But if they fuss and you have to take them out to the back, then you would hold them that whole time. You don't let them run around in the back. You're holding them while they're back there, and you're keeping them in your arms and close to you. And and they're saying, well, I want to get down. It's like, well, honey, if you want to get down, then you have to calm down, and we'll take you back into church. And so they start to understand that if they're taken out, the purpose of being taken out is to calm down so that they can go back.
Not buy more freedom, which is why you're getting the whole "I want to go to the bathroom" thing, because they get to run their little.
Having them sit at the dinner table and then maybe engage in conversation with you, or do little things that keep them at the table for that longer period of time, so that they can get practice sitting still and participating in more grown-up type things. Really sets the stage for learning how to sit still and participate more effectively in grown-up Mass.
Now, the
sorry.
the deadline answer to your question is, when do you remove them? If they are starting to fuss in a way that is distracting people from the Mass, then be polite, walk out with them, and use the techniques we're talking about so that they can come back quietly and participate.
But give them a little bit of time to try to settle them down first, and see what you can do in the pew first.
And of course, teaching whisper voices at appropriate times at home lets them know what kind of voice they're supposed to be using in their sacred space.
Jack, thank you so much. Helpful? Was that helpful to you?
That was more than helpful. I really appreciate it, and we'll be going through the readings this Saturday night with them. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful.
And Jack, if I want to invite you to download the Catholic HOM app, because this is the kind of question we deal with all the time. And if you have any kind of follow-up questions or things don't go like you thought they would, we're there to answer those questions every day and talk you through all this stuff all the time. Check it out.
And come to our webinar on Wednesday. You can ask more questions.
Jack, that the webinar. Well, no, I've forgotten now. I had it in front of me and now I've forgotten. Okay, YouTube.
CatholicHOM.com/webinar.
Oh yeah, it was the /webinar part that threw me. All right, Jack, thank you so much. What a wonderful question. Let's go to Mabel in Texas, listening to EWTN on channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Mabel, we're delighted you're here. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Greg and Lisa Popchak. Hey, Mabel. Oh, Mabel's listening to the radio. And in a minute, she's going to go, oh, hello. And this will be fun. Here it comes. Hello, Mabel. All right, well, no, she's not there? All right, I guess we'll have to come back to Mabel. The number here, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. I'm impressed to hear that the Vatican Dicastery, the USCCB, and so many others are involved in this. We really are in a new era, and you just can't. And I have to say, I know this because people my age say, I thought I could do the stuff that my parents did. I sent them to Catholic school, and I was shocked when they were teenagers and they had given up on all of it.
That's right. And in fact, the latest research really shows that most kids lose their faith between the ages of 10 and 13 years old. But parents don't realize it until their kids go to college. So they've essentially been raising spiritual zombies for 6 to 7 years before they even know that the faith is dead.
Yeah.
And so what this framework that we've created with our partners does is it helps to create the kind of relationships with your kids where you're having regular conversations with them about where they're at in their faith and how you're all encountering God in your family, and really praying together, not just saying prayers, but really praying together. In a way that helps you understand where your kid's faith is, and when they're having questions and when they're struggling with doubts, we want to be there with our team of pastoral counselors and parenting coaches to be able to help hold your hand through those conversations so you don't get scared and you don't shut down and you don't chase them away, because the reality is we can't parent like our parents did. Because if we do it what our parents did, that was great then, but there was a whole culture that acted as a safety net for anything that they missed. It's all up to us now. And that's a terrifying thought in one way, but with this new resource, we're creating that safety net so that Catholic families can stand together and support each other in raising faithful kids and being faithful, confident parents.
Well, I think the fact is also that within families, you might say that about, mom and dad make that decision, but the uncles or the cousins or whatnot are not necessarily on board, and you want to maintain those family relationships. But that also is a challenge, that even within my own family, say this is not supported, what I'm trying to do with my kids.
Well, that's absolutely right. And what the research really shows is we don't have to be afraid of the culture. We don't have to be afraid of peers. We don't even have to be afraid of those kinds of situations in our extended family that you were just describing, if we're working to create a quality relationship with our kids, because the more our kids can look at our family, it's what it really comes down to. If our kids can look at our family and say, our family is generally speaking more connected, more peaceful, more joyful than my non-Catholic friends' families, or even if my family is struggling, our Catholic faith is helping my parents face those struggles and overcome them, then they see the faith as the source of the warmth in the home. But if they don't, that's what leads them away.
Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak are our guests this hour. Your calls are welcome. 888-318-7884. We're talking about raising faithful Catholic kids in a world that is not cooperating. 888-318-7884.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
The recent decision by the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade was a monumental victory for the pro-life movement. But the fight is far from over. With our new booklet, Why We're Pro-Life, we have produced the perfect tool to prepare you to have peaceful and convincing conversations to shed light on the truth about human life from conception to natural death. Catholic Answers is printing millions 2 ways. First, by generously supporting this project. 25 cents prints one book, $2,500 prints 10,000, and so on. Second, by helping us distribute the booklet through your parish, your school, or the pro-life ministry you work with. Catholic Answers is going to blanket the country with Why We're Pro-Life, but only if you step up and help us. Thank you so much. For more information, visit whyweareprolife.com.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Miss a show? Make sure to catch up by downloading the podcast, available online at Catholic.com.
Matt Swaim here. Tomorrow on the Sunrise Morning Show, we'll talk Bible foods with Rita Heichenfeld and dig deeper into salvation history with Dr. John Bergsma. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Enjoying our hour with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak talking about raising faithful Catholic kids. Kind of, I think it's fair enough to say, in a post-Christian world, your calls are welcome. 888-318-7884. I don't think I've mentioned it on this program, but Carrie has asked me to mention. We have a new podcast. Dr. Ray Guarendi is our new podcasting personality, and you know Dr. Ray Guarendi, and we're so glad to have this association with him through the very kind permission of Ave Maria Radio. Got 2 new episodes from Dr. Ray this week. Check it all out at Catholic.com. As a matter of fact, you can check out all our podcasts over there at Catholic.com. Trent's podcast, the Focus podcast that we do here, and new podcasts coming, several more between now and the end of the year. So check it all out at Catholic.com. And don't miss all the new stuff from Dr. Ray Guarendi. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak, our guests. I just want to make sure, are we okay with audio now? How's it going? How's it working?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. We passed the test. Let's go to Liz in Charleston, South Carolina, listening on 7:30 a.m. in Charleston. Liz, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Greg and Lisa.
Hi. I have 4 young children. They're in public school, and we go to we have them in CCD, but that's just 1 hour plus Mass, and I take them to a daily Mass once a week. But I'm just feeling kind of lost as far as programs that I can be sure to do with them to help teach them the faith the rest of the week. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Absolutely.
So, I mean, a lot of it depends on the area, but to be there isn't a lot, and that's one of the reasons that we've created this Catholic Home, Catholic HOM resource, because in addition to the other resources we have monthly downloadables, activities, and games that parents can do with their kids. Because what we found, again, the research really shows that where you send your kids to school or what programs you use matter less than how much parents and kids are involved together in exploring the faith at home. And so the whole point of this resource is to be able to give parents like yourself who want to be able to pass their faith on to their kids things to do with their kids at home the other 7 days a week between, from Sunday to Sunday.
And this isn't just for small children, although there's a lot for small children. It's straight on through high school and really beyond, because they're learning how to move into Catholic adulthood. So the resources are there every month. It talks about what's going on with the saints. There's simple things we can do. This is not, you have to do a particular craft that has mom and dad staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning that the kids aren't interested in. It's very real life based stuff. There are some lovely Catholic supplements out there, but as a homeschooling mom myself for the last 30 years, I can completely tell you that if you just teach Catholicism at home as a subject, it's not necessarily going to stick. I mean, I don't know about you, Liz, but I don't really feel passionate and live out my great desire to do algebra 24/7, right? Because it was a topic. It was a subject. I learned it. I did the tests. I got out of school. And I don't have a living faith in Christ and a love for his church. And living in a way that allows you to share the faith and make it the source of the warmth in your home so that you're teaching it all day long in a way that makes sense, in a way that they integrate into their very being, because it's who we are as a family. That's what really sticks, and this resource will help you do that.
So, for example, we have a series of 6 animated videos where Lisa and I will take a cartoon family through this whole Catholic Home program, and it's fun for the whole family to watch. So, it's not, if parents are wondering, well, how do I get my kids on board with this? How do I get my spouse on board with this? You watch the videos, you do the discussion questions and activities that are part of the whole thing, and it's a great way to bring the faith into the home. And even after you're done watching the videos, we have regular discussion questions. We have downloadables every month, additional resources that you can use so that you can really show your kids how the faith is bringing you and them closer together every day. And that's really the goal of the whole program.
Liz, what do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been searching for, just somebody who could, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel,
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Not just reinvent the wheel, but you know what? You don't have to do it by yourself, because as soon as you have a question, our whole team is right there to answer the question for you and walk with you through the whole thing. So you don't ever have to feel stuck or scared or confused. Your kid asks you something you don't know how to respond to. You get online, you open up the app, and our whole team is right there to help you right away.
So it's CatholicHome.com, where you can find out all about it. If you go into your app store, whatever
and
type.
Catholic HOM, so no E at the end.
I
Catholic
apologize.
HOM.
I should have kept saying. Yeah,
Right.
Catholic HOM, because it's Households on Mission is the HOM. Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so CatholicHOM.com, or find it, wherever you get your apps. Wherever you get Candy Crush, you can get CatholicHOM.com. And also, once again, I just want to mention the Raising Confident Catholic Kids seminar, which is just about 1 week from this moment. Will you tell them again how they can sign up for the seminar?
Yeah, it's absolutely free. It's 7:30 Eastern next Wednesday, and it's CatholicHOM.com/webinar. CatholicHOM.com/webinar.
Liz, thank you so much for the call. Our number here is 888-318-7884. If you'd like to talk with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak about maybe the situation in your home, maybe a particular challenge that you are facing in helping the kids or the family to come to the full embrace of the Catholic faith and live it out in a way that you feel confident that, hey, these kids are going to have the tools that they need to stand up and be Catholic in a culture that is presenting no shortage of difficulties in that regard. 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. Are there I don't know but I guess common mistakes that we make? Are there, this is the thing. I guess you have already mentioned one, in the sense of, don't think that you can do this the way your parents did it, because it's the culture is not there to support you. But
and don't think of it as a program per se, right? So I realize. So, for example, Catholic HOM is a program, but it exists to support the family, right, which is God's original small faith group.
Yeah.
And one of the things that will happen a lot of times, we get calls on our radio program, More to Life, where people will say, well, how do I help my kids own their faith? And we'll say, well, tell us a little bit about how you live your faith at home. And they'll say, well, we go to Mass every Sunday. And I say, that's awesome. What do you do to live your faith at home? And they say, well, the kids belong to youth group. I say, that's awesome. What do you do to live your faith at home?
Right.
And they say, well, the kids go to parish school of religion. And I say, that's awesome. What do you do to live your faith at home? Well, we say grace,
Sometimes.
question mark.
Question mark in the voice.
And so and I'm not picking on families. I get it, right? As a church, we've done a terrible job across the board at forming domestic churches, which are what faithful families are supposed to be. We're supposed to be outposts of grace in a hurting world.
Yeah.
But nobody teaches us how to do that. And so this Catholic Home resource is really there to help form those domestic churches, so that we can take that Eucharistic grace home and really start living our faith in our relationships all day long.
And just like your last caller said, we're either left feeling like we don't know what to do at all to be able to teach our kids the faith
Right.
and have them own it, or we try to apply all the traditions that come from the monastic and clerical traditions to our home life. So we have, 5 kids under the age of 5, and we're trying to get them through an entire rosary. Or we're trying to get them into Liturgy of the Hours. And they're climbing all over the place, and they're crying, and you're thinking, I'm never going to be able to do this. And then life kind of runs you over as they grow up, and we just sort of never get to it. And we're hoping God fills it in somewhere.
Well, and, the reason for that, most of what we think of as Catholic spirituality is actually drawn from that monastic tradition, and it doesn't fit into messy family life. And with the Second Vatican Council, the Council Fathers proclaimed this, what they call the universal call to holiness, the idea that holiness wasn't just for priests and religious and monks and sisters, that holiness was meant for everybody. But the problem is they said that, but then they didn't develop any new modes of spirituality that allow families to really live it out. And so what they did, all very well intentioned, they said, well, you can use our tools. Hey guys, how about you do the Liturgy of the Hours? Yeah. And I said, well, that's awesome, but I can't get my kids to sit down and do that. So what now? So the whole point of this process was to really say, well, what would a family-based approach to Catholic spirituality look like if we built it from the ground up? Right. And that's what this Catholic Home program is really all about, to teach families to live that family-based approach to spirituality that invites God to be a member of their family and part of everything they do all day long.
I have to add to this side that, when we talk about family, I really want people to hear that this doesn't mean that both parents have to share the faith and share it equally. It doesn't mean that if you're a grandparent, you can't do this and have a huge effect on your grandchildren whose parents may be struggling to do this or rejecting doing this. The whole idea of Catholic HOM, the Liturgy of Domestic Church Life, is to help us to take whatever grace we have, whatever sacramental grace we have existing in our family at whatever generation we have, and enliven it in a way that draws our family together in God's love, helps all of us grow, love each other more, love God more, and do some really practical everyday things that, yes, does pass the faith on to our kids, but helps us all grow in our faith.
It's just so exciting when you say it this way, because I do parents feel so defeated in many ways. But what you're really saying is, look, we're on the verge of a new era where you're not growing up in a Catholic neighborhood. Everybody is all around the parish. This is something that's never been done before. You can't just grab the old monastic tools and make the home a monastery. So in a certain way, I guess it positively said, this is an adventure. We're inventing a new way of doing this Catholic thing now.
We're rediscovering the way it was done in the very beginning. Because if you look in the book of Acts, every time there was a conversion, every time the apostles converted somebody, they converted a whole household. Right. And the whole family became that community of faith. And in fact, Mass happened in houses, and faith was practiced in homes. And so what we're really doing is we're rediscovering a tradition that was lost to us for many, many years. But we're realizing that faith needs to take root and flourish in the Catholic home, just like it did at the beginning. And that's how the church grew in the first place,
and that
the
is
relationship.
how it grew in the beginning. And that is how, we've heard for so many years now the whole idea of the new evangelization. Well, our kids are hurting. Yeah. As we are seeing more and more and more, the mental health statistics for teens right now is dire.
Yes.
They want the love of mom and dad. They want to know that they have dignity and worth and that they're children of God. They want to be able to find that in a safe and loving home. And when we start to do that through this concept, not only will we be helping our children's spiritual and mental health life, but their friends are going to start to see that. Yes. And they're going to want it. And the families around us are going to say, how are you doing this? My kid is struggling. Your kid seems better off at the moment than my kid. How can I get a little bit of that? Because I'm scared for my kid. And then the faith starts to spread because it will be seen as that answer that helps us all know who we are in God.
What a beautiful vision! It's one that we can begin to work together to make happen. It's just wonderful to think of all these institutions, from Ave Maria Radio to the U.S. Catholic bishops to the Vatican, to you yourselves in the institution of your family in your home, working on this. I want to invite folks to call and ask. We have lines open if you'd like to call. 888-318-7884. Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak are our guests, and if you're thinking, oh, he mentioned books before, I'll just mention them again. Here's a couple from their library of books between the two of them that they've written: Parenting Your Kids with Grace and Parenting Your Teens and Tweens with Grace. Those are books that will also help out with this project of helping to foster children who are fully and joyfully Catholics, faith-filled, and evangelists themselves. 888-318-7884. The number. We'll be right back with more with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak right after this.
Hang on, we'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Do you love sharing the gospel and want to learn to be more effective? Join the St. Paul Street Evangelization online School of Evangelization. You will learn to build bridges of trust and make disciples by befriending strangers, proclaiming the gospel, inviting people to the church, and praying with others. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you are unable to give, we'll give you a membership at no cost. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
This is Toya Hall, Vice President of the Guadalupe Radio Network. Catholic Radio has the power to transform people's lives by proclaiming the fullness of truth with love and clarity. Catholic Radio equips the faithful to address the problems that face our world today and from a uniquely Catholic perspective. Daily doses of Catholic Radio helps to build strong and faithful souls for Holy Mother Church.
The world needs EWTN Catholic Radio, now more than ever.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Dr. Greg Popcak says I look 30% more dignified with my reading glasses on, so I'll just be wearing the reading glasses for the rest. Calls welcome 888-318-7884. So you've been doing this for a while. You've been trying. It's adults have you seen?
Well, and even with their spouses. So, for example, we do a monthly live stream where we call it the Catholic Home Family Meeting, where it's a live Q&A with Lisa and I. And
for the people who are on the app.
Yeah, so it's part of the premium subscription. And so we had a mom who was participating in it and said, "Look, my husband isn't on board. I mean, he's not hostile, but he doesn't really participate in the faith, and kind of rolls his eyes when I ask him to pray with me, and I just really don't know how to be a Catholic household if he's not on board." And so we suggested, it's a simple way of starting the day praying over him, not asking his permission, but just laying hands on him and praying over him and saying, Lord, bless my husband and his concerns and help me be the wife that he needs me to be so I can really love him the way you want me to love him. And she, we talked about it a little bit more, and she thought that was a good idea. She wrote the next day, though, and she tried it, and she said, I actually got up a little bit late, so I kind of missed the opportunity to do it first thing in the morning like you suggested. But as he was going out the door, I got my kids together, and we all blessed him. We all laid hands on him and all prayed over him together. And I said the thing about, Lord, please help me be the wife that he needs me to be and love him the way you want me to love him. And my kids all said, please bless Daddy and help us be good kids for him. And he just melted. And he saw how happy they were praying over him, that he started praying with them every day after that.
What a story! What a beautiful story, with the little Holy Spirit twist in there. That the kids also got involved. That even you, the experts, didn't suggest that, but the Holy Spirit made it happen.
She wasn't saying, "Oh, honey, can we pray together?" Or, "Honey, why aren't you praying with me?" She just did it. Had the boldness to go and do it with her kids, and he melted.
What a
there's
beautiful
another example.
story.
We had another mom who was talking about her teens. And how the teens were kind of pushing back about spending any time as a family and didn't really want to do the faith thing, like teens do. And so we suggested actually watching this animated video series with them and having a conversation about what it would mean to be a better team and do a better job taking care of each other as a family. And she said, and she wrote again. It was the next day. She wrote in and said, I did it, and they kind of rolled their eyes about it and they grumbled about it, but we got through it. And at the end of it, we all suggested different ways that we could be a better team and take better care of each other, and they actually participated. And I could, you could knock me over with a feather, she said.
Yeah.
And there's still work to do, right? But that's a huge gain in 24 hours to get your whole family on board, when before that she was afraid to even mention the faith.
Wow. CatholicHome.com, but that home has no E on it. It's CatholicHouseholdsOnMission.com, CatholicHOM.com. I want to get to Sharon in Canton, Ohio, before we have to go, listening on 94.5 FM. Sharon, so glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak.
So I guess my question is, my children are all grown, 5 adult children, and my husband was never Catholic. So our kids went to CCD. They didn't go to Catholic schools, except the youngest finally went to a Catholic college. But they've all kind of fallen away. My husband and I still go to church. He comes with me most Sundays, but he never became Catholic. I'm not sure how to help with their faith other than praying for them.
Okay.
Because my oldest two, they don't go to church at all, and probably only my middle child still attends regularly.
All right, well,
let's hear from Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak.
There are two things I would say. So the first thing, we have a book actually called Having Meaningful and Sometimes Difficult Conversations with Our Adult Sons and Daughters. It's kind of a mouthful, but that's the title. How to have meaningful, sometimes difficult conversations with adult sons and daughters. And one of the points we make in the book is that our relationships have to be big enough to contain the conversations we want to have, right? So faith conversations are big conversations. And sometimes if we have a shallow relationship with our adult kids, we try to have big conversations and pour them into. It's like pouring a gallon of milk into a shot glass, right? And it just spills all over the place.
And it creates quite a relational mess, actually, because when your kids are feeling the shallowness of that and suddenly you come at them with faith stuff, it can be perceived as anything from insensitive to a full-on attack, and it doesn't work.
So what we want to do is make sure that we're working to build up the rest of the relationship. How much time can we spend with them? How supported do they feel by us in general? How open are they to just really share their life with us? And as they do that, then we can look for little ways to bring God into the conversation. Again, don't ask permission to pray for them, but when they're happened, and you say, well, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that happened to you. Lord, thank you so much for that blessing in my daughter's life. I'm so grateful. So how's the weather where you are? Your son complains to you about this job problem, and you empathize with them. Oh, honey, I am so sorry that you're struggling in that situation. I wish I knew what to do for you. Lord, please bless my son. I want to help him so badly, but I don't know what to do. But I know that you can be there for him. Let him know how much you love him. Amen.
Wow.
And by the way, how's your kid? You just don't get
dwell,
in, get out.
Move. Yeah.
But bring the Lord into it. The other thing, of course, is make sure that you're letting your faith challenge you and your husband to have a deeper relationship, so that your kids can look at you and say, "Wow, the faith is really the source of the warmth in their marriage. It's the source of the warmth in their home, and I want that."
Yeah, even if your husband isn't Catholic, if he's a Protestant person, you share the Lord as your God. And pray together. Pray over your husband, the way Greg was mentioning in the example earlier. Pray that you can be the best wife you can be to him. Share his struggles by praying for him, just the way he was describing. It will change a lot of things for you.
Sharon, I'm going to leave it there because I want to get Joshua in Alabama listening on Archangel Radio on before we have to go. Joshua, go ahead with your question for Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call, and thank you all for all that you do. My question is, besides Mass and daily prayer, what are the best routines you can establish with a young family? I'm thinking of kids under the age of 5.
Cuddles. Straight up, man, cuddles, because you have to understand that as parents, when they see you, you are the face of God to them. So you want your relationship with them to be loving and cuddling, and you can play all sorts of games with them. How loved is baby? How much does God love baby? So much. Making their arms real big.
Or you're hugging them, and you I love you so much, and the only person who loves you even more is Jesus.
That's right.
And
reading those Bible storybooks, but doing it not in a formal way, but in a way you're cuddled up and you're saying, find the camel in the picture for the little ones, and just letting them know that God is the one who makes mom and dad their most loving person, their best friend, the person they want to be with.
Singing songs with them. The faith evolves in stages, actually, and the stage of faith that goes on, say, from 6 down is we call it the cuddly stage of faith. It's actually the projective stage of faith, technically, but really what it means is the projective stage of faith. So, in other words, cuddly stage. Yeah, in other words, how the kids feel about you is how they're going to feel about God. And so, in that 3 to 6 age range, the more you amp up the warmth, especially around family prayer, especially around family story time when you're reading Bible stories and saint stories and those kinds of things, or doing fun singing songs with them about Jesus that really talks about how much Jesus loves them, but helps you guys draw closer together.
Putting on worship and praise music and dancing around the living room with them and having a blast and letting that soak into their bones.
The more they can feel that the faith is the source of the warmth in your home, is the more that they'll be on fire for the faith.
Joshua, what do you think?
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I will recommend to you, Joshua, check out the app. You can get it on the App Store, Catholic Home, that's HOM, or go to CatholicHOM.com. Dr. Greg and Lisa, can you go through all of it again? Like there's the seminar, there's the weekly thing, the app. Give us an idea, because I know lots of people would like to avail themselves of these things.
The benefits on the app, you mean?
Yeah. The things that are coming up.
So coming up next week, of course, is the webinar, Raising Confident Catholic Kids. It's absolutely free. All you do is register at CatholicHOM.com/webinar, CatholicHOM.com/webinar. That's next Wednesday evening at 7:30. On the Catholic Home app, though, you can, on the free side, you can get all the information that you need to really live this framework out on your own. For a subscription, though, you get the animated video series that you can watch with your kids and do the discussion questions. You get monthly downloadable activities. Plus, you get daily professional accompaniment and expert support. So if you've ever got questions or concerns, or you're just feeling like you're having one of those parenting days, we're standing there right with you when you need it most.
Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak, so grateful that you've undertaken this mission in cooperation with so many others, including the U.S. Catholic bishops and the Vatican. And we'll look for you, we can look for you just about anywhere. You're in books, you're in TV, you're in media, but we'll see you every morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak.
7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Oh, 10 a.m. Oh, that's right. Okay, thank you. See, the math failed me. Coming up, the author of that book I was telling you about at the beginning, Sexual Identity, The Harmony of Philosophy, Science, and Revelation. I'm really excited to have this conversation. We'll be right back with that right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. We've really been looking forward to this conversation. This hour we welcome Dr. John Finley, and we're going to talk about the new book that he edited and is one of the 6 authors of. It's called Sexual Identity, The Harmony of Philosophy, Science, and Revelation. If you have questions about it, I mean, of course, as you can gather from the title, it's related to this whole transgender movement that we are facing, but it works at being a comprehensive response to that from the perspective of reason more than anything, and then moving into the faith perspective as well. So if you have questions about that, you're very welcome to call 888-318-7884. In addition to being the one of the authors and the editor of this book, Dr. Finley is also the academic director of the Valor Institute here in San Diego. Dr. Finley, thanks for coming in.
Cy, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, extraordinary book, an extraordinary problem, this whole transgender movement. What you did here is, it seems to me, about the brightest thing I've seen on how to address this. You got philosophers, theologians, medical doctors, and scientists, and said, let's get the people who are the real experts in their fields, and we'll look at this in a comprehensive, holistic, if I may say, Catholic way. That's a great piece of work. What was the inspiration for that?
Yeah, thanks so much. It's an interesting story. I'm trained as a philosopher, and I had been working on the nature of the human person, and in particular, the human person as male or female from a philosophical point of view. And what's interesting about that is that when you look at the history of the Western tradition, men and women come up all over great literature, Homer and Shakespeare and everything in between. In the philosophical tradition, there's not a whole lot said. In fact, it's mainly in the ancients, the ancient philosophers, and then it tapers off in the Middle Ages and in the modern, what's called the modern era of philosophy from around 1500 to 1900, almost nothing. And then it resurfaces with a real bang in the 20th century. Why is that? Well, there's a number of reasons, partly because issues like the ones we're facing hadn't come up, so there might not have been a need to talk about them philosophically.
Right.
But it's also, I think, connected with cultural factors. Women have been more hidden generally throughout history.
Right.
But secondly, it's connected with science. So some of the ancient and medieval thinkers of prominence had certain mistaken biological views of the nature of women in particular. It's, I don't think, an accident that when the science was corrected in the 18 and 1900s, you get a resurfacing of this question, of this attention on woman, what it is to be woman, on men and women, and then the Catholic Church really starts pursuing these lines of thought in a way that we hadn't seen before. You think of a thinker like Edith Stein, but then, of course, Pope John Paul II and his incredible writings. So that's all to say that as a philosopher, I was very interested in taking the great vision of the human person that we get in Thomas Aquinas, but then applying that in light of contemporary science to the question of man and woman specifically. And then I realized, well, of course, I'm not a scientist, and there are cases out there, especially cases in people suffering from disorders of sexual development, where it can be, of course, even from a scientific point of view, difficult to tell if a baby is male or female. So these are kind of the outlier cases from a biological point of view. And so I was wondering, well, as a philosopher, what can I say, or do I have anything to say about those sorts of cases? I need the help of other people. And it's around this time that the transgender issue starts to hit. And so I thought, well, I'd like to work with a group of Catholic people, but who are experts in their fields.
Yes.
And I knew I wanted an endocrinologist, someone who studies hormones, an OBGYN, a psychologist. Was very fortunate to get a plastic surgeon involved, and then a colleague of mine who's a theologian. And so in about 2017, we all came together and put together a course at Kenrick Seminary where I was teaching at the time. And they all came in and guest lectured, and we took about a year in preparation and met once a month at my house and read from each other's disciplines and sort of learned each other's languages.
Isn't that
and,
great?
It came together really well, and we thought, well, we should make this into a more permanent resource. So that's where the book came from.
This is exciting in several ways, but one of them, the compartmentalization of modern knowledge, so that the history professor really doesn't know anything about what the chemistry professor knows, and the chemistry professor doesn't know anything about what the philosopher knows. It's certainly benefited us because we got really good chemists and historians and not such good philosophers. Maybe you, but but it has also wounded us in the sense that we don't even believe really, I think, in a comprehensive truth anymore. It's almost habitual to not think in holistic terms about what's true and what's false.
That's absolutely right, and it's something that John Paul II does a great job of articulating in his encyclical Fides et Ratio. And it's very interesting, by the way, in that encyclical, he gives the kind of story of reason and the fall of reason, beginning with the Garden of Eden, that in about 10 pages very much parallels what he does with the presence and fullness and fall of human beings as male and female in his theology of the body.
Yeah.
In other words, and this is addressed in the book, the crisis that we're facing today having to do with what it means to be man and woman is as much a crisis of human reasoning, of our relationship with truth, as it is a crisis in terms of who and what we are in our bodily dimension. And you're absolutely right to point out that we have this terrific fragmentation of the various disciplines of reason, which in their own right are quite powerful and effective. But the increased specialization also leads to a sort of terminology that's very intimidating to most of us, especially when it comes from the scientific quarter. This would be sort of the rational voice of authority in our culture. And it ends up being almost a matter of faith for most of us when we hear scientific things read to us or scientific figures articulated. And so it's so important to be able to validate and respect the sciences and partner with them, but within a view of reality that is, for lack of a better word, philosophical, namely attentive to the whole of what is and our place in it, and that has the ability as much as possible to be able to speak the language that normal human beings live and die for.
And this is one of the things that you do in this book, Sexual Identity. But the book, again, is Sexual Identity, the Harmony of Philosophy, Science, and Revelation. It's not an academic book. I don't have to have a PhD to understand it. But it's an intellectually potent book, but not something that I need that, like you said, that's particular academic vocabulary. But so I imagine there's a person that might say to you, okay, Dr. Finley, you're trying to harmonize philosophy, science, and revelation. You're doing all this heavy, kind of intellectual lifting. Why don't we just rely on common sense? Why not just rely on common? You know the argument.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good question. So on the one hand, common sense it can take different directions. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to listen to too many political debates, for example, to come to a point where people on opposite sides of the spectrum regarding a given issue will invoke common sense.
Right.
So you might say, well, let's have a flat tax, for example. It's kind of this equal for all persons who are equal, so it's commonsensical, right, that we should have flat tax. Or you could have the opposition to that point of view, saying, well, no, things need to be gradated in proportion to people's disparate degrees of wealth and so on. That's common sense. So invocations of common sense are themselves, they only go so far. And they call for us to a deeper engagement with the truth. But I also want to say this, that there's another way in which our common view of things, a kind of native human experience that we have, could be called common sense and is in fact quite accurate. And what I would want to see this book as doing is supporting something like that. We don't have to go to school and achieve an immense amount of learning to realize what it is to be male and female. The fact that our bodiliness is different, We just learn these things through, most of us, through growing up in families and familial relations. And so I would hope to see that philosophy, revelation, and the sciences, in this case, are supporting common sense. If anything, the fact that we're trying to make commonsensical notions like I am a man trapped in a woman's body and so forth, that means that in a particularly crucial way, philosophy needs to aid common sense now, because as a culture we've gotten to the point where philosophical notions are in dispute. I don't know that that's ever happened in history, where on a cultural wide level, questions concerning basic identity and existence have become newspaper headlines.
Exactly right. That's right, and it's both terrifying, but also an opportunity.
That's
in
right.
other words, but I'm certain that both sides will invoke common sense. I mean, the side that I find myself on will say, well, it's common sense, man and woman. That's what we are. It's what a mammal is, male and female.
Yep.
It's what a human being is. And the other side will say, well, it's common sense that a person should be free to choose for themselves.
Yep.
So the appeal to common sense is ultimately going to fail. There has to be something more profound, more challenging than that.
Yeah, that's right. And if nothing else, the fact that so many different disciplines kind of are at stake here. So a side which will say that it's common sense, that we ought to simply go with our feelings, will invoke psychology, will invoke science. There's a heck of a lot of scientific research, ostensibly, and psychological research and so on that seems to be in favor of moving in that direction.
Right.
And so then, for no other reason, the sciences in their validity and good philosophy need to be able to step in and show, well, no, there's a fundamental truth here that's being ignored, and that we need to, in a holistic way, recapture and defend on the terms in which the debate has been given to us.
So in a certain sense, you're asking the specialist, or the person who is in the thrall of the specialist, step back and we'll look at the whole of what it is to be a human being. And that will allow us to identify which thing is a part, which thing is not a part of what that whole is.
Exactly. And, interestingly, this is something I'm going to again refer to Fides et Ratio, John Paul II's encyclical. He says that the very task that you just described is a crucial task for the entire third millennium. Namely, somehow regaining the relationship among all these diverse branches of knowledge and being able to assemble them in a thoughtful and coherent way. It's not easy. This book is fairly unique, it seems to me, but it's also probably in some ways a bit clunky, right? Because this sort of effort just hasn't been undertaken. I hope this is a good beginning at it, but we're going to need to. I think the way of the future for right-headed intellectuals is to work at this sort of thing with people from the other disciplines. And it's going to take time to learn each other's languages this way.
But I was so glad that you included the plastic surgeon, because we needed somebody to tell us what actually happens to the human body when it's exposed to these hormones and these surgeries. Not a kind of we'll leave that in the realm of the mysterious mist, but to actually talk in graphic terms about this is important, because otherwise we're not fully allowing ourselves to process what's going on. I got to take this first break. You're welcome to call. Our guest is Dr. John Finley. The book is Sexual Identity: The Harmony of Philosophy, Science, and Revelation. You are welcome to call whether you are in agreement with what you have heard or would like to challenge it, whether you're Catholic or not a Catholic, whether you believe in reason or you don't believe in reason. Whatever. If you're human, you can call 888-318-7884. Right back with more on sexual identity from this comprehensive point of view with Dr. Finley right after this.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features daily Mass, prayers, articles, and meditations in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church. On the web at magnificat.com.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
One time somebody said to me, "Why don't you air these people?" And I said, "No, because I don't think they're Catholic." He says, "By what right do you have to say that?" I said, "I own the network."
Mother Angelica Live Classics. Tonight, 8 Eastern on EWTN Television and Radio.
(888) 318-7884. The transgender movement, in many ways, is maybe a wedge in our society that goes right through the heart of families, goes through the heart of educational institutions, goes through the heart of journalistic endeavors, scientific endeavors, religious endeavors, the whole thing, because these are not reconcilable positions. One, the body, a received gift that is not just an accoutrement for the soul or the true self. The other, no, the body is a thing that it's infinitely malleable in a certain sense, that as we get better, more technically competent, we can change the body in an infinite number of ways, even to say that a man has become a woman or a woman has become a man. All of this is very, very well kind of explored. And lots of new openings made in the book Sexual Identity. The editor of that book and one of its 6 authors, John Finley, is here with us this hour. The number, if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. So we even hear about people in medical school, for example, being unwelcome because they say things like, I don't believe that the human body can just be changed, and the science would seem to be on their side, but somehow the force of the argument is not on their side. That they still lose the argument, or they lose their position in the medical school. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting observation. I recall seeing a headline last year in a major paper that basically expressed it this way, that the trans person is not given his or her right to exist.
Yeah.
Right. So it comes down to something as astounding and fundamental as the very existence of this person. If you look at it that way, if that's what you think is at stake, then science is going to crumble in the face of that.
Right.
Right. Science, for good or ill, science is a more specialized, nuanced sort of human thought and vocabulary that's can be a tremendous aid to us. But again, for good or ill, it's not something that we can live by. And that's what's coming to the surface now, is that no matter which kind of side of this that one is on, it's not ultimately going to be a scientific argument one way or the other that's going to be able to capture the whole truth and that people are going to be able to rest in. And so I think that's a big part of it, is that when it comes down to a right to exist, that in some ways is going to trump everything else.
Yeah, and you can see why. I mean, that there are people listening now who will say that this is a hateful conversation that we're having. If what's at stake is the annihilation of persons, that the person doesn't even have existence, if you go with what we say, then you can see that would be perceived as an act of hate. To say, well, actually, no, you're not whatever you feel. That your body is you, in a way that is not just a container.
Yeah, and so here's where certain distinctions are so important to keep in mind. The distinction, for example, between the person and the person's thoughts, between the person and the person's feelings or experiences, right? It's a very, very basic distinction. You wouldn't think it would really need to be invoked explicitly, and yet we're at a point where it does need to be invoked. And it's crucial for these sorts of conversations with people who are either themselves struggling with gender dysphoria or their loved ones, that the person in some way or another has to be kept in the forefront, this respect for the person, but and the feelings, the experiences, the suffering, however we want to put it, can be affirmed and acknowledged. These are real. It's a real experience. It's a real feeling or thought process that one is in fact of the other sex. But we also know that our feelings do not bring about our realities. We all have...
That's a shocking thing to say. How many years of philosophy did you have to take before you could say that? Because there's actually people who don't believe you. They don't agree with you that our feelings, that they do in fact believe that our feelings in some way do constitute our reality. Requires that I have relations with other people in order to be the thing that I am. I can see how. So I'm vulnerable there.
Yes.
Okay. So why does that mean that we make an exception? We go, look, just because you feel black doesn't make you black.
Right.
Just because you feel 8 feet tall doesn't make you 8 feet tall. But if I feel like a woman, that makes me a woman. Why does our vulnerability, but just the nature of us as sexual creatures makes us vulnerable to one another? Why does it make us want to make an exception in that case?
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that the sexual realm is so largely impacted by these fundamental relationships in human life. You think of the parent-child, man and woman, husband-wife, and when we're involved in human relationships, especially harm that's done, and that's kind of a negative validation of the fact that these relationships are crucially important, right? If they weren't so important, so deeply constitutive of who and what we are, then their going awry wouldn't have such a deep impact on us.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
the
it
broken
seems,
heart.
That's right.
Words. Yeah.
Well,
right.
and then we live in a culture where tacitly we're working to, and we have been for decades, to destroy almost all of these relationships. You have no-fault divorce, and you have the separation of sexuality from reproduction, and you have proliferation of pornography. So when all these relationships are corrupted, are viewed as negligible, then it makes a lot of sense to arrive at a point culturally where we're questioning these very realities themselves.
Again, 888-318-7884. I have not gone to the callers because I did think that this is a topic that is worth an extended discussion. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't mind just continuing for a full hour, but I do want to get to some callers, and we'll start with Diana in Kirkland, Washington, listening on Sacred Heart Radio. Diana, we're glad you're here. Go ahead with your question or comment for Dr. John Finley.
Thank you both for taking my call. My concern is, and I think my question is, in full appreciation of the challenges that someone who feels they are transgender or feels the dysphoria, why does this matter to my Catholic faith or to me when I believe Jesus so thoroughly taught us about acceptance and lack of judgment, or actually not lack of judgment, but not judging others? Why does someone who must be struggling immensely with such issues, why do I have to consider this an issue?
In other words, why not just have a live and let live attitude, or even love the person where you find them attitude, and not worry about this transgender stuff? Is that...
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say, especially... Yeah, I would say the latter. Why not welcome and embrace this and try to appreciate and understand without it being the issue of transgender that we were referring to?
Diana, I thank you for the question. I hope you can hang on, because we are right up against the break here that we have to take. Could you hang on for just a quick minute, and then we'll have a conversation between you and Dr. Finley?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Our on the line, Diana in Kirkland, Washington. We are going to get to her comment and her question right after this. We're discussing Sexual Identity, the Harmony of Philosophy, Science, and Revelation, the new book edited by Dr. John Finley and co-written by 6 different authors. More of that right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Matt Swaim here. Tomorrow on the Sunrise Morning Show, we'll talk Bible foods with Rita Heichenfeld and dig deeper into salvation history with Dr. John Bergsma. Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Dr. John Finley is our guest, and his new book is Sexual Identity, The Harmony of Philosophy, Science, and Revelation. I say it's his new book. He's the editor and one of the authors, but shared the authorship with 5 other people, experts in their fields, scientists, doctors, philosophers, theologians, in order to produce a work that tries to give a fully Catholic with the lower case C and in some degree, Catholic with the uppercase C view of sexual identity. An extraordinary piece of work. And on the line to talk with Dr. Finley about it is Diana in Kirkland, Washington, who's, and Diana, you can correct me if I characterize your question wrong, but essentially saying, why don't we just adopt a more gospel-like live and let live, love the transgender person position as Catholics, and not engage in this kind of contest against the transgender movement. Do I have that basically right, Diana?
You said it better than I did, but that, yes.
I had 5 minutes to work on it while we were at the break. All right, Dr. Finley, how do you respond to what Diana's asking?
Yeah, thank you, Diana, for the question. It's a very thoughtful question and an important one. So I guess I'd want to distinguish 2 things here. So the first is the person we're talking about. And then in a minute, we bring up the other aspect of this, which is the movement, okay? So when it comes to a person, someone who identifies as transgender, identifies as trans, well, fundamentally, of course, we're called, as you say, as Christ teaches us in the gospel, to love this person. And as a person, we absolutely have to accept them. So then the question comes down to, well, what does it mean to accept a person? What does it mean to love a person? And at least part of what that means, a very important part, is forming a relationship with the person as the time and circumstances allow. So we want to be in relationship with people. That's natural to us as human, and we want to be in relationship with people so that we can help them and they can help us, and we can live together in community. So I think that's extremely important, that as circumstances allow, we have to try and form relationships with people. This is, well, common sense, to go back to an earlier phrase in the conversation. But a deep part of human relationships also involves recognition and acknowledgement of the truth of who and what we are. And so for example, I don't think if I were to form a relationship with someone, at a certain point, someone who identifies as trans, I would want to talk with them about what the meaning of this identity statement is, right? Because I would ultimately want to resist the notion that this person, who and what this person is a trans person. Now, am I going to lead off with that the first time I meet them? Absolutely not, because I'm more concerned about them as a person, right? But maybe a more shorthand way of putting this is to say that when Christ accepts people of the sorts that you mentioned, maybe tax collectors or prostitutes, he accepts them as persons. He's not accepting the specific label of tax collector, right, or prostitute, because he knows this is not what these people are first and foremost, right? And especially if it's something they're doing that's wrong, such as thievery or tax collecting. Now, in the case of a person who identifies as trans, Christ, of course, would accept this person. But what I'm also trying to point out is that he wouldn't accept the truth of the statement that this person is a trans person. That's not who and what this person is. And so, as circumstances allow, the relationship with this person hopefully would move in the direction of being able to bring that into the light and asking, well, why do you feel this way? When did these feelings come about? How can we assist you to come into the truth of your bodiliness while not ignoring these feelings and these desires?
Diana, I'd be happy to have your response.
Well, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of your answer, and I guess my response is that yes, in seeing the person for who they are and their personhood, their sexuality, to some degree, I hope doesn't have to come into my conversation. I hope that by seeing them as I hope Christ does and would, if I can manage that I'm looking beyond their trans or their bi or their queer or whatever their sexuality is, or even their heterosexuality. I hope I'm looking beyond that and seeing them and not then engaging the rest of the conversation or the labeling. I would hope that in exploring, I don't think we should not discuss these issues as Catholics. I just think we also need to do it in that context. And I think if your book does that, I'm anxious to read it and to understand it better, because for me, that's where I guess I would come out. And I don't think it's such a different position from what you're expressing.
No, to me, your instinct or your impulse to charity and loving the person as person, it sounds exactly on. I don't think we could debate with that at all. However, Dr. Finley, you mentioned there's the person, but there's also the cultural and societal side of it. Did you want to address that a little more about what is your concern for society in embracing the transgender movement?
Yeah, so this, what makes the tricky part of your question, Diana, and this is just, I think this whole issue is difficult, has to do with the fact that in our culture right now, it's not simply a matter of the person, but there is decidedly a movement in our culture right now that's advancing as a statement of truth the idea that one way of being a woman is to be a trans woman, and then that leads into questions concerning laws and how we form laws and maybe change laws. It has to do with public spaces. Obviously, there was the big bathroom debate. It has to do with
women's athletics.
Women's athletics would be another, and so. I think that this enormous cultural movement that we're dealing with, well, it's unfortunate on a variety of levels, but one of the ways in which it's unfortunate has to do precisely with the person that you're talking about in your question, right? Because since the cultural movement is afoot, it can become, sadly, easy for some people to just look at this person who identifies as trans as an icon of the cultural movement, and they're simply to be dismissed or ignored. And for us as Christians, obviously, we can't take that route. But it is important for us as citizens and as Christians to be able to stand up for the truth in a cultural way, and to be able to argue against some of this false view of what it is to be human that much of the culture is putting forward. And so trying to do both of those things, it is admittedly very difficult.
Diana, I just appreciate your call so much. I do not in any way want to put you on the spot, but if you want to continue the conversation, we can. If you're satisfied there, I will move on to other callers.
I'm satisfied, and I look forward to reading the book.
Thank you so much, Diana, for the call. The number here is 888-318-7884. Our guest is Dr. John Finley. We're talking about his new book, Sexual Identity. And up next is Sue in Ohio, listening on 820 AM in Ohio. Sue, we're glad you're here. Go ahead with your question or comment for Dr. John Finley.
Yeah, I don't know that I really had a question. I haven't read the book. But just on this whole topic, I dealt with pretty severe gender dysphoria when I was quite young. And the good Lord has done a lot in my life I'm not the same person that I used to be, but I'm very thankful that I'm 63. So,
yeah.
Back in the day when I was young, there was no such thing as the surgeries, and I'm glad that there were not surgeries available because, like I say, I am not the same person I used to be, so I'm very thankful.
Dr. Finley?
Yeah, Sue, thank you so much for calling and sharing that that witness. You know, it's remarkable to see how, one of the other things that's changed a great deal in the recent years, the intervening years from the time of which you speak, is the presence of social media and the way in which the transgender movement, among others, has become a kind of social media contagion and is especially impacting young girls for that very reason. So you get these kind of large-scale movements toward the trans identity on the part of many young girls, almost as though it were a consequence simply of a certain kind of push from the side of social media.
Unfortunately, some of this is irreversible, as is made clear in the book, and so you have a young girl who's put on hormones. I think in many cases we're told, well, that's irreversible if she wants, but she's lost her fertility by the time you reverse it. And fertility ain't nothing. We act like it's just nothing. Maybe that's part of our habit of dissociating sexual intercourse from procreation, that we've separated those two things. But it's so cruel to say, well, we can reverse it if you want to. But the fact is, many of these young women will, in fact, never bear children because of what was done to them as teenagers.
Yeah, that's right. And when you read this chapter, the chapter by Dr. Patrick Lappert, a plastic surgeon himself, very, very charitable man, but a real, very knowledgeable regarding the surgeries. It's horrific reading, to be blunt. And one of the things you see that even in terms of one's sexuality, just one's capabilities when it comes to sexual intercourse, there's a great wounding that's occurred, and once more, what that says to me is that, among other things, a lot of this suffering, a lot of this movement centers around people who have a suffering in their life that they're trying to alleviate through a trans identity, but it's a mistaken way of trying to alleviate it. And so all the more do we need to, in other ways, reach out to these people and try and help them.
Sue, I'm very grateful for your call. Is anything else you'd like to offer, or that does it?
No, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, and always leading with love, but love does not override truth. So I think we need to just look to Christ for our identity and for all that we are. So that's what I have found in my own life.
Sue, thank you. Thank you so much. We have to take our break. We will do that with lots of folks still on the line, so more questions to come. For our guest, Dr. John Finley, we're talking about Sexual Identity, the new book, and the thing that we are all wrestling over in this society right now. The number is 888-318-7884. Right back with more calls.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
From Rome to your home, EWTN's Vatican Bureau lets you watch all of the important events from Rome, even if you don't have a TV. Using the latest technology, we've made it possible to watch the latest news from the Holy See, all delivered directly to your home. It's easy. Watch live on EWTN YouTube and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
A lot of people think that street evangelization involves yelling out of a bullhorn telling people that they're going to hell. Not so with St. Paul's Street Evangelization. Our methods are non-confrontational and effective. We simply offer information on the Catholic faith along with rosaries, miraculous medals, and prayer. Pope Francis wrote about how beautiful it is to see street preachers joyfully bringing Jesus to every corner of the earth. Street evangelization is fun and fruitful. Join us today at streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. We've seen so much change in recent decades and so quickly. I mean, when you think about every politician in the United States and during the 2008 election saying, well, I wouldn't go so far as to say gay marriage, and now virtually no politician in the United States would oppose gay marriage without making any other judgment on that. You'd have to say, well, that's a pretty radical shift in the entire consciousness of the society if that has changed so completely, so quickly. I think many people thought the next great battle was going to be, and I may have gotten this from your book. If I'm stealing from you, just let me know. But I think after the gay marriage fights, people thought, well, polygamy will be the next thing to come down the pike. But that was our attention was diverted, and suddenly the entire society is involved in this great conflagration regarding sexual identity itself. It's not about marriage. It's about what I am. And you don't get to tell me what I am in many cases. So this book comes at a very fortuitous time. It's called Sexual Identity, The Harmony of Philosophy, Science, and Revelation. You'll learn, I'll tell you what, you will learn a great deal if you take up this book and read. But Dr. Finley is our guest this hour, and I want to go to Dave in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, listening on Sirius XM Satellite Radio, EWTN, Channel 130 on Sirius XM Satellite Radio. Dave, go ahead with your question for Dr. Finley.
Hi, doctor, and thank you, sir. My question is, my son-in-law recently came out as transgender feminine. Actually, another acronym or verbiage was used. I don't quite remember. Maybe non-binary or something. Mm-hmm. But over the last several months, really gone down the road of this feminine switch, if you will. And I would like to ask the doctor, I don't know where this ends, and I would just like to ask for your opinion. How do I deal with this? What would be the right approach for me to deal with this, with my daughter in this relationship and still in supporting her husband? Actually really supporting him.
Okay, Dave.
Thanks so much for the question, Dave. Wow, what a difficult situation. So, first and foremost, as a follower of Christ, we have to, I think we have to pray for your son-in-law, and you've got to be able to pray that you can love him in truth, love him as Christ would, in your own circumstances. And of course, it's a delicate situation. It's not an easy one to pronounce on because he's your son-in-law. So, where my mind immediately goes with this is yes, your daughter and her involvement in this and your relationship with her, because it's, I would think that your relationship with your son-in-law is going to have to be mediated by your daughter. So, those are some general thoughts. I'm not sure if you're seeking advice more on the side of information or more on the side of kind of practical action and how you interact with him and speak with him. Is it kind of, are you looking for one or the other of those more so?
Doctor, I'm looking maybe more for the practical. I am starting to read your book that you're discussing. I do have a copy. I'm starting to educate myself over all these things through various websites, sexchangerewith.com, and all these speakers and so on and so forth. But I guess I'm just struggling with, I don't know when you just take someone aside and say, what are you doing?
Right.
You're going, what are you both doing? You're going to throw your lives away. Look at these facts, look at these things, and then, am I being true? This is what I'm really struggling with, so I'm seeing a therapist about this too. It's a touchy situation, there's no doubt, but what do you do with the father point of view, first of all, and then the Catholic point of view, or just God's point of view?
Yeah.
I can't sit here and ignore this. It's right in your face. And if you don't agree, they disassociate with you, then I lose everything. But it's
a as they used to say, a sticky wicket. So,
yeah, Dave, if I may, and Cy, we might be able to just work this out after the call. But a couple of these authors have had a great deal of experience in working directly with people who identify as trans. And I know they would be very happy to be in touch with you if you'd be open to that, and they could provide more real life experience than I'd be able to, and so that would be my first suggestion.
How about we do this? We'll have Sarah, if you would like to leave us your information, you can leave an email, a phone number, whatever you'd like, Dave. But does that all right to you, Doctor?
That'd be excellent.
Okay. You know what? We have just a few minutes left, and I do want to get to another caller. At least one more caller. Is that okay? Dave, so let's get you in communication directly with Dr. Finley, and I'm going to go to Jim in Portland, Oregon, listening on KBVM. Jim, go ahead with your question or comment for Dr. John Finley.
Yeah, I would. I worry about what's happening to the culture, speech codes, and it's almost like 1984. I think a lot of the trans community is totalitarian. They want the first word, the last word, the only word. And if you disagree with them, you're evil. And they've obliterated totally the idea between objectivity and subjectivity, which I think this is all about. And I remember dealing with one person who just agreed I won't use any pronouns at all. And
because the person wants a certain set of pronouns, and
right. Yeah.
I've got you.
And I mean, I imagine some of the trans would think that would be hate speech or something like that, But I just avoided any pronouns, hate speech or not. And I got along with this person. Okay, we were together at work, and that I and some of this stuff, 100 years ago, the eugenics movement. They had grandiose ideas too, and it turns out they're wrong.
Just because we have a shortage of time, I want to get particularly on the idea of this totalitarianism, because I think many people do experience this as a kind of totalitarian impulse. You can't go down Twitter and say what you say. That's and I don't know, maybe not even YouTube or Google. I don't know where you would be banned for saying the things that you say. What do you make of that?
Well, yeah, and I think the George Orwell comparison that Jim brings up is in many ways an apt one. And so, in other words, because what we are as human is a rational animal, we have these God-given faculties of reason and free will, our intellect. it would make sense that the greatest sort of totalitarianism is precisely one that has to do with our thought. And the quickest avenue to our thought is language, right? So to be able to employ language and even try to harness people's thoughts in such a way as to commandeer the entire landscape, right? That as much as possible, all of human rationality and its expressions ought to accord with what we want to say, and nothing else will be allowed. There is a certain way in which that is the greatest sort of totalitarian effort that could ever be inflicted on human beings. And because of the presence of much of modern technology that makes that sort of communication more available, we're seeing this kind of totalitarianism in our society right now. And so, once again, this goes back to something we talked about at the start of the hour. We have to counter this by way of being able to sit down and talk with people like we are right now, and people that we disagree with. Just being able to recapture that fundamental human ability of realizing that just because we say certain things doesn't mean we're hateful, evil people is hugely important. We have to somehow try and practice, get into the habit of being able to sit down and talk with people regarding areas of disagreement. It might be very minor things at home and among relatives, but it's a good place to start. And giving that sort of example, I think, is one of the only ways in which we're going to be able to counter this sort of thing.
Because it's on such a personal level that I can't be who I am unless you speak to me in the way that you see what I'm saying? It's such an invasive thing. It feels like an absolute all or nothing. And so you're saying conversation is the only way to break through that.
Yeah,
there's no shortcut.
And what's very interesting about what you just pointed out is that what it shows is that all of us realize, even if only subconsciously, that we're radically dependent on others and the affirmation of others. Right.
Yeah.
So we can't get away from this relationality, and conversation is a primary form of recovering that relationality in our lives.
We're made for relationship. That's at the root of the book too. Sexual Identity: The Harmony of Philosophy, Science, and Religion. The new book, edited by our guest this hour, Dr. John Finley, authored by Dr. Finley and 5 others, experts in their field. But at the root of it, we need to recover a coherent view of what it is to be a human being. And this is a great service you've done in helping us move towards that.
Thanks so much, Si.
It feels like the beginning of 1,000 years of these kinds of books that we're going to need.
I hope so.
But I hope we do get 1,000 years of good books.
Yeah.
But I hope it doesn't take 1,000 years to make the argument. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm so sorry to the callers we didn't get to. Just so many callers this hour, and also a need to really dialogue about these things and not just give quick answers and move people along. So I do apologize to those we weren't able to get on with. Once again, the book is called Sexual Identity. We'll see you tomorrow for 2 hours of open forum, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.